Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. I am your host, The Vigilante, and I'm back at it with another video. So for today's video, of course, we got to get into some more Harman Smith.
I have long said the only time you ever really hear anyone talk about Palworld is when some game journal is looking to publish some negative story about Nintendo. Whether it's about the lawsuit or the Pokemon IP or how they handle these kinds of plagiarism cases.
For one, Harman, Palworld is not plagiarism. They sat there, took Pokemon, and decided to upgrade it to what it should be, even though Game Freak hasn't made Pokemon good for a long time.
The Palworld thing is just an excuse for clickbait from gaming journalists and YouTubers. It is
not clickbait, it is complete bullshit what Nintendo is doing to Palworld. Palworld is an amazing game. Maybe you should go play it. Oh wait, that's right, you only have a Switch and it's not compatible with the Switch because the Switch isn't strong enough.
It's absolutely, I think, the biggest example of how everyone will bend over backwards to defend a company that's clearly in the wrong just because they want to spite Nintendo, you know? Like, Pocket Pair is losing this lawsuit. There is no recovery from this. They're never going to have another success story after this. There will be no, actually, Palworld in and of itself was not successful, but that's another story entirely, you know?
What do you mean they're not a success story? Palworld has sold over 15 million units, and they're still in early access. Just wait until they're finished with the full game. What are you talking about? And they're going to win this, because Nintendo has no leg to stand on.
There's so much to unpack with this situation, but the big thing for me is just how non-Pokemon fans have tried to make this out to be some big, Pokemon killer thing. When that isn't going to happen, that is never going to happen. It would take over a decade to, build up an audience, to have the kind of brand, to create the kind of brand synergy that Pokemon enjoys with the video games, the trading card game, and the anime. And Palworld just isn't going to do it. That game didn't even last a couple of months. It was kind of shocking to me, when
it sold over 15 million copies in early access. What do you mean that it isn't even talked about anymore? Are you kidding me?
During the Pokemon Day presentation of 2024, just how little anybody was talking about Palworld.
Why would they be talking about Palworld? It's Pokemon Day, for crying out loud. What do you think they're going to be talking about?
And that is kind of the Palworld community in general, is just this sheer obsession with the Pokemon brand IP, with Nintendo, with Game Freak and what they're doing, and there is no real momentum around their brand, And you'll see this happen, over and over again. They'll prop up anything to be anti-Pokemon, whether it's Dragon Quest or Shin Megami Tensei or...
You do realize Pokemon just ripped off Dragon Quest, right? Dragon Quest was around long before Pokemon ever was. The first Dragon Quest game was in 1986, you fucking idiot.
Atlas games in general, right? I've seen all sorts of things be propped up against the Pokemon brand just to downplay the Pokemon brand, right? Again, nobody who tried saying that Yokai Watch was a Pokemon killer actually went out and bought Yokai Watch. This is very important when talking about this, because competition is not going to kill Pokemon, okay? It's just not gonna happen.
No one wants to kill Pokemon. Maybe select few people might, but most people do not want to kill Pokemon. I honestly love Pokemon, but I want Pokemon to be great. The game that I've always wanted, which I know is never going to happen, if they ever do it, they're going to make multiple games out of it so they can milk it for as much as they want. But I want a game where you actually play as Ash from the start of his journey to the end of his journey. Just like I said, there's no way they're going to make one single game like that. But how awesome would that be if you literally went through every single game as Ash, play literally as Ash? That would be awesome.
This idea that Palworld was some major threat to the company is laughably stupid. And it does need to be acknowledged going forward just how out of touch with reality the Palworld audience actually is.
You're so correct, Harman. Yes, Palworld was never a threat to Nintendo, to Game Freak. But that's why they sat there and filed a lawsuit and made up a bunch of patents after the fact to try to get them. Because guess what? They were a threat. 15 million units in early access sold. Does your pea brain with 2 brain cells left understand that?
And I find it very interesting, going into the Switch 2 season, just what Pocket Pair has been doing, like the kind of interviews they've been given and the kind of statements they've made. Because the last I've heard from them, right, they were giving an interview and they were just like, yeah, we're going to put Palworld on Nintendo Switch 2 if it's beefy enough.
Yes, they will, which they actually probably could on the Switch too. I think they could probably run that game on the Switch too. But you have to understand, Harman, the Switch is already outdated technology. The Switch 2 is already behind. When you look at the PS5, the Series X, when you look at PCs, they are already underpowered. And just wait until the next gen, it's going to be even worse.
So, like, the idea was that, like, ooh, if Nintendo hardware is powerful enough, we'll put Palworld on it. Let's forget for a moment that, like, Palworld could easily run on a Switch 1, but, like...
It might be able to. I seriously doubt it, but guess what? We'll never know. You want to know why? Because Nintendo had to be big-ass babies and sit there and go file lawsuits against them when they have no case.
Is Pocket Pair. They're releasing statements saying that they're going to release Palworld on a Switch 2. And, like, if that was actually going to happen, wouldn't they be, like, working with Nintendo? Wouldn't they have gotten, like, dev kits? Wouldn't they, like, be working to make that happen? They wouldn't, like, be making these, like, stupid statements like, ooh, we'll support it if the hardware is good enough. It's, like, it's clearly meant to be inflammatory, like, it's meant...
I can see Pocket Pair putting Palworld on Nintendo Switch too because they want to make some money. I can see them looking past what Nintendo's doing right now, but I'll be very surprised if Nintendo actually allows a game that could actually compete with Pokemon on their platform.
To be the kind of thing that game journals report on and share to the masses. This is their brand of publicity. This is the only reason they're relevant, is that they constantly release statements like antagonizing Nintendo and the Pokemon Company.
If anybody's antagonizing, it's Nintendo here.
This is all they've ever done. It doesn't make them cool or badass. Like, we're seeing something now with Genki, actually, the accessory manufacturer that was behind, like, the early Switch 2 weeks.
Which was a little ridiculous. I'm only going to do a short thing because I'm doing another video on Nintendo Prime who talks about this, but that company literally never even hurt Nintendo. The only reason why Nintendo did this is because Nintendo don't like third party. They want you to go buy their accessories. Why would they want a third party? They found a way to hurt a third party person and they took advantage of it. Now, technically what the person did was illegal. That's why Nintendo's going to win it most likely. I don't know if it was illegal, but it was wrong technically. They did use leaked information, which was probably leaked by Nintendo themselves.
Nintendo is filing a lawsuit against them too. And they're pulling the same similar stunt. Like, oh, we're just a small company. Like, it's kind of interesting how these companies are, like, weaponizing the online Nintendo hate to try and get their names out there and to try to get people to pay attention to them, to care about their, like, knockoff products, right?
Well, there's a huge difference between Pocket Pair and Genki. What Genki did was technically wrong. Nintendo's most likely going to win that one. What Palworld did is they looked at a game and decided to change it and make it better. You don't think Nintendo has done that? They sat there and took Dragon Quest and turned it into Pokemon. Look at how many of their Pokemon were ripoffs of Dragon Quest.
Like, it's becoming kind of a trend. And I think if this continues, like, more and more people are going to start seeing through it. Like, the Pocket Pair situation, I think, is going to be really similar to, like, the Last of Us situation, like 10 years ago, right? Because this is kind of a similar thing, isn't it?
Please continue. I am so confused that you're comparing the Pokemon situation with the Last of Us situation. Please just continue.
Where, like, everyone comes out, like, declares The Last of Us to be the greatest thing in gaming, the greatest thing ever, the best game ever made. And, like, over a period of time, its reputation erodes, I should say. It erodes away because of the poorly received sequels, all of the other PlayStation IPs that copied its formula.
Are you kidding me? Nintendo copies their damn formula. And it wasn't The Last of Us that ruined its reputation, it was Sony re-releasing the remasters over and over and over again and remaking things that were already a remake. That is what ruined the reputation, but it's still selling phenomenally well. No matter how much you feel about the story of Last of Us Part 2, I honestly enjoyed it, but I was never a huge Joel fan. I understand why everybody loved Joel. I know people are going to come for me. I did not overly love Joel. I can say that.
And people simply playing the game and realizing that it didn't live up to the expectations, set by it. The Last of Us had a really good reputation to start with, but because of the incompetency of Naughty Dog and Neil Druckmann, their brand has just withered away to nothing,
What are you talking about? Combined, they both have sold 40 million copies. Last of Us Part 2 still sold 10 million copies. That is a huge success to sell 10 million copies.
Pocket Pair is in a very similar situation where people thought that this would be something to rally behind to destroy Nintendo. And what ends up happening instead is that this company is absolutely taking an L in court. I think recently a couple of YouTubers have released statements saying that
if you're talking about Palworld has not taken an L in court. There's no way Nintendo has a shot at winning this. And how are you comparing the situation between Palworld and The Last of Us Part 2? Two completely different games, two completely different situations. You got one situation with Palworld where you have Nintendo trying to ruin them because they sat there and took one of their best IPs and made it better.
Things aren't going well for Nintendo in that front. Don't believe it. You can look at Palworld's numbers. You can look at how the merch isn't moving. You can look at how animated products are in standstill. You can see the public kind of turn against them a little bit.
No, I don't know what you mean. What are you talking about? The public is turning their back on Palworld. The public has been standing up for Palworld. The public has been criticizing Nintendo for this, except for you.
The writing is on the wall for Palworld, and honestly has been since they showed off that initial trailer in 2021, right? This is a game that simply shouldn't have been allowed to exist, This is a game featuring characters that the company does not own, and they have been exploiting the reputation of that brand to promote their own products.
That's exactly what Nintendo did. You think Nintendo created all those Pokemon? Just sat there? There was one made after an ice cream cone. Do you think Nintendo just magically created the ice cream cone? No, they copied the iconic ice cream cone look. And they sat there and copied a lot of Dragon Quest characters. They turned a lot of their monsters into Pokemon. Are you kidding me?
That is something that really needs to be acknowledged. At the very least, that Palworld is a knockoff brand. It is a copycat product that doesn't deserve any respect or any attention at all. And yet, a lot of people are desperate to try and make out Palworld to be some innovative success story. Don't believe it. Don't buy into it. It's not true. It is impossible. Palworld is only relevant because of just how much contempt and hatred the gaming community has for Nintendo and the Pokemon Company.
You're an idiot. You just contradicted yourself in so many ways. You sat there and said earlier that it only was big for 2 months and no one ever talks about it. And now you're sitting there saying the only reason why it's relevant is because people sit there and hate Nintendo. Make up your mind. Is the game relevant or is it not? Well, that's it for my reaction. Let me know down in the comments if you agree with me or not. Please like, share, and subscribe. And remember, wrap it up or you could produce a Harman Smith. And until next time, stay vigilant.